there's a couple of things that are super important that parents don't realize, that every time the kids think about something, they tend to become that. So every time you think about, talk about, or write about something, you improve the probability that you can do that. You will do that. It becomes like you to do that. It creates an imprint. So every time I think about a problem, I'm improving the probability I'm going to get the problem.
Welcome to The Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds in junior golf.
For joining us today.
I'm happy to be here.
So let's start here. How important is the mind when it comes to excelling in sports?
Well, let's talk to the people who are winning. I think that 95% of winning is done by only 5% of the participants. So I've spent about almost this time next year will be 50 years of being a full-time studying this and a full-time mental performance coach. And so when I talk to them and I ask them this question, what percentage of golf, or let's just say golf for a minute.
Sure.
Percentage, because I worked with tons of tour players. So what percentage of golf is mental? I get a big number back. The number I get most often is my sport's 90% mental. Then I ask them the second question. Well, since you've been playing golf, since you've been doing this, what percentage of your time and money have you spent on the thing that you think it's 90%? It's a very low number. Well, that doesn't make sense. If you were in business and you had 90% of your revenue was going to come from 10% of your clients, you would take real good care of those clients. And this is a situation that's common in sport, is that the mental game is valued by the top performers, but it doesn't get in the training scheme of most people that are going through learning how to do a sport. I mean, I had the same problem. I started out working on form, on skill. I mean, that was it. And I thought that performance was only a function of skill. The more skilled you are, the better you do, and you don't have to do anything else. It wasn't until I actually made the United States team, made the United States Olympic team, that I go to the Olympics in 1972, and I'm not ready mentally. I'm ready technically. My teammate ends up winning the gold medal, and I'm training with him every day, and my skill is equal to his, and I should have no problem competing in the games, but I just choked under pressure, and I lost so many points in the first half of the tournament that I thought there's no possible way that I could medal, and so then pressure's off, and I shoot really good the rest of the second half. And so good, in fact, that I get a silver medal. But I come home frustrated because I blew my chance at a gold medal, because I didn't take a real good look at the mental game, because that was what failed me. And I think it fails a lot of folks. And I was actually if you take the top 5%ers, sometimes I will ask the top 5%ers this: if you think that golf is 90% mental or 95% mental, then what about the second 5%? The second 5% that's just underneath the 5%. They have the same equipment, the top 5%, the same passion for the sport, the same coaches, the same experience, the same number of times that they've played than the top 5%. There's only one difference between them and the top 5%. They don't win. Well, I spent 3 years in 1972. I'd spent 3 years on the U.S. team without winning anything. Oh, I got better all the time. Now, it one of the reasons I didn't win was because my teammates happened to be the best in the world at that time. We kind of dominated Olympic shooting at that time, Olympic rifle shooting, and so I had the benefit of training with the best in the world. But I knew that something was missing, and something was missing was the mental game. And so when I came home from the Olympics in 1972, I decided I want to know what the winners know, what the winners know about this mental game. Now the rifle shooters weren't going to tell me anything. Uh, they had to shoot against me next week. So I spent the next 2 years on the phone. Back in those days, Ryan, we didn't have cell phones. We had answering machines. And so I would leave I got the phone number for a world champion or Olympic gold medalist, and I would send them a message on their answering machine. Said, you don't know me, but I'm a silver medalist in the Olympics, and you're a gold medalist, and I need your help. Please call me back. And they always did. And I asked them, what do you know about the mental game? What makes you different? Why are you at the top 5% that do 95% of the winning and everybody else is struggling? What's going on? And I got some information. Nobody had the whole program, but everybody had a piece of it. And after a while, I started connecting the dots, and I said, there's a system to this. There's a way to have a consistent mental performance under pressure, and you can beat over trying and overthinking and pressure and all those other things that were holding me back. This is why you're not winning. And so I upgraded to this system. I called it mental management, and I upgraded to it. And the next World Championships I went to, I won 3 events, and then the next Olympics I won the gold medal and pretty much dominated my sport for about 4 years. And then started teaching this system, and golf found me in about 2004, and I worked with my first PGA Tour player in 2005, which was Rich Beam, and then I've worked with a lot of different performers. Since then, I've got a couple of clients that are competing this week in the Olympics in Paris, a shotgun shooter, an archer, and but it doesn't really matter what sport you're doing. That everybody at the top thinks the mental game is really important.
I have a few questions here, Lanny. The first is, I think golf and shooting, there's a natural partnership there because they're similar in the sense that you're talking just micro little adjustments can make the difference between, hitting the bullseye or not hitting the bullseye, between hitting, the green, being 2 feet from the pin, or, being in the bunker. From the mental standpoint, what similarities are there between your background in shooting and training Olympic shooters and then the mental side of golf?
Well, golf is a shooting sport. And when I first started working with players, I was amazed. I didn't know. I was a spectator of golf. I would watch it on TV, but I'd never played it. I still have never played it. And there's a good reason why I've never played golf.
And what's that?
It's addictive.
It certainly is.
And I don't need another addiction right now. Any of addictions right now, but it's one of those things that if I ever did it, I would want to do it all the time. And I probably made a big mistake picking up a rifle. I should have picked up a golf club because they certainly would be financially rewarding. whereas rifle shooting is not. Most Olympic sports are not financially rewarding, but rifle shooting or shooting is the second most expensive sport in the Olympics to train for, and the most expensive sport is equestrian, and but one thing that I noticed when we started this business and started teaching the mental game, we began to teach coaches and who saw the benefit of adding a mental component, mental training to their technical training, their form training. And when I got out of the Army and started my own company, I started an international shooting school, and I started doing something that was kind of different at the time, is that I started teaching my mental system to athletes at the same time that I taught form. And what I found out was that by teaching some mental skills early on, they learn form faster. And when they go to competitions, they're much more consistent in competitions, which reduces the amount of frustration that athletes have by having high scores one time and low scores the next time. And I realized that how important it is to teach the mental game at the same time that you teach form. And then as we began to teach coaches, or even anybody that we teach, the most common thing that people say when they finish training from us is that I wish I'd known this sooner. Well, I wish I'd known this sooner too. Well, when it's sooner is when you're first starting. Sooner is when you're still at home. Most people start their sport of choice while they're still at home. And so I have a question for your audience, or for you, and you're going to represent your audience here. What's more important to you, what your children accomplish or who they become?
Well, 100% who they become, because I believe that what you attract to yourself is based on who you are. Like in other words, what you can't get anything in this life without first almost embodying that frequency or that which you want on an internal level first. So any sort of accomplishments would ring hollow, or at least they would be fleeting if you're not that from the inside. And so for me and my focus, it would be teaching how to attract and manifest what you want, like how to learn how to perform, and then those skill sets then could be translated into anything that you choose to do. That would be my thought.
That's interesting. I have that's rare when I get a parent that says what they accomplish, but accomplishment is what the world rewards. Accomplishment is A, B, C, D, F in school. Accomplishments how many votes you get in an election. Accomplishments whether you win a tournament or not. It's first, second, third on the leaderboard. It's gold, silver, bronze in the Olympics. It's what's rewarded. Accomplishment is as often rewarded because it's easy to measure. Accomplishment has a number associated with it. And it's easy to measure this guy's better than this guy because his numbers are better. And but the real important things, according to parents, who they become, is very difficult to put a number on. How do you put a number on character? How do you put a number on confidence, on commitment, on trustworthiness towards and so the world doesn't reward these things directly. They're rewarded indirectly. And one of the things that I found out when I did this survey of Olympic and world champions is I found out that they think differently than the people who don't win. And one of the things that I discovered was that performance, it doesn't matter what it is, academic performance, sport performance, is a function of three mental processes. The first one is conscious. I call it conscious process. It's basically your thoughts. You change your thoughts and everything changes. So that includes what you're going to think about before, during, and after a golf shot, what you're going to think about, what you're going to talk about, what you're going to write about. All of those things are your thoughts. Okay, then the second one is certainly your skills, and you've got to have skills, and you've got skills are determined by good information, the best you can have, the best you can afford, the best equipment that you can afford, and a lot of reps. And that's how you make skills. But there's a third component that I didn't see early on, and most of my clients don't see, and that's the becoming portion. And I call that self-image. That's how you fit into the world. How do you think you can or think you can't? You're right. Henry Ford said that, or somebody said he said that. And but it's true. The self-image is what you think that you can do. It's how you fit into the world. Am I a good player? Am I comfortable? Am I confident? All of that stuff. And the parents play a huge role in this, because if I think that if here's what's really kind of interesting is that all of these world champions and Olympic and tour players, I've never talked to a tour player that didn't tell me that golf was 90% mental. And but if that's the case, then where are the mental coaches? I mean, you go to a high school, and I live in Texas, and you go to a high school, and there are golf coaches in high schools here. There are football coaches, basketball coaches, track coaches, and sometimes lacrosse coaches, swimming coaches, all kinds of coaches. But you'd be hard pressed to find a mental coach anywhere. But that's not true. There are thousands of mental coaches. They're the people who take the players home from the game. The parents are the most important mental coach that a child will ever have. 90% of their character, their becoming, who they become, is shaped by the time they leave home. And so most of the time, the parents are the ones that are shaping that, because they spend more time with the children than the coaches do. And sometimes the parents can, without knowing it, can actually do more harm to their kids' development than good. And they love their children, but it's not their fault. They just don't know what to do.
So Lanny, let's unpack this for a second, because I think that what you're saying here is of utmost importance. Can you give listeners and parents some examples of some unconscious ways that they might be holding their children back when it comes to developing their self-image, that things that will not be serving them moving forward, and more importantly, some examples of what they could do to help build that positive self-image?
Well, first thing that parents need to know is that the self-image is built by imprinting. Imprints are things that cause the self-image to grow or shrink. All right, so what are these imprints? The kinds of imprints. Well, what they actually do certainly does. In other words, if they hit a good golf shot, what imprints, it's like me to hit a good golf shot. If they hit a bad golf shot, it's like me to hit a bad golf shot. So what you do causes the self-image to grow and shrink. And if you do something well, a lot of times you probably develop a self-image that I'm good at this. And if you have trouble a bunch of times, I'm not so good at this. And so that's true. But what is not so well known is that, and everybody knows that when you're around other people, you tend to become who you're around, and that's why parents are so concerned about who their kids hang with, because it does shape their self-image and their behavior. But there's a couple of things that are super important that parents don't realize, that every time the kids think about something, they tend to become that. So every time you think about, talk about, or write about something, you improve the probability that you can do that. You will do that. It becomes like you to do that. It creates an imprint. So every time I think about a problem, I'm improving the probability I'm going to get the problem. Every time I complain about a problem, I'm improving the probability I get the problem. Okay, so how does this happen? So here's my example. Okay, your kids come home from the game. You pick them up from the game, or maybe you watch the game and you're taking them home after the game. And you one of the worst things you can do is to ask your kid, "How'd you do? How'd you do?" We live in a negatively charged world where people often talk about what they did wrong instead of what they did right. Well, give me a sport that, if you've ever played a sport, when people come off of games and people ask them how did they do they talk about what they did right more, or talk about what they did wrong more?
We always seem to be focusing on what we didn't do well. Even if we had a good game, it'll be that one or two shots we missed or that pass that we missed. It seems like our brains are wired to focus on the negatives, not the positives.
So knowing that, you would think that parents would know, and they just don't know that to do this. That's a wrong question to ask. That's an open-ended question. When you ask somebody, how did you do? They can answer, or they can talk about what they did right, or they can talk about what they did wrong. So I'm going to give you three, as a parent, three magic questions to ask your kids. The first question would be, what did you do well? What did you do right? Let's get them talking about what they did well. What did you enjoy? There's a lot of different ways to ask that same question. But you want your kids talking about what they did right first. You want those imprints, and I can give you some science to prove this, but what the conversation, I'll tell you what the kids are going to remember. They're going to remember the first thing you say to them and the last thing they say to them. The middle part, not so much. Okay, so that first question is really important. That last thing that you say before you leave them is really important. And so what you want to do is get them talking about what they did right first. The second thing that you can do is we don't ignore error, but don't talk about the problem. Talk about the solution of the problem. Every time you talk about the solution of the problem, self-image grows. Every time you talk about the problem, self-image shrinks because it becomes like you to make the error. So one of the things that like, take this example, that a report card comes in, and parents are talking to their kids about a report card, and well, the last 6 weeks you made a B in this class. This six weeks you made a D. What was wrong? Aren't you studying? Aren't you doing your homework? Aren't you paying attention in class? Have you been playing too much golf? Are you not paying attention to your studies? What's going on? What's wrong? Well, you just put a lot of imprints into your kids that that they've usually improved the probability that they're gonna continue to do all those things. Maybe they're not doing those things, but if you talk about it so much, whatever you feed the self-image, that's what it becomes. So don't talk about the solutions. I was lucky. My father was my first rifle coach, and he was a solution-based coach. He told me that whatever whatever you want to do, there's only one best way to do it. And your job is to find out the one best way. And when I shot a bad shot, he didn't tell me what I was doing wrong. He always told me, here's what you need to do. Here's what we need to do. Here's what you need to do. That we're going to learn about everything we can about that one best way. And when we don't do it, we're going to say, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? What do we need to do? We didn't know anything about self-image when we were first doing this, but my dad knew it was the right thing to do. And that was huge. So when you're talking to your kids about their mistakes, they're going to want to talk about it. Try to steer them to what's the solution? What's the solution? Don't talk about the problem. Don't be frustrated or complain about the problem. What's the solution? What do you need?
So would a way to do that with the second question, so after we ask them, hey, what went well? Focusing on the pauses for the first question, would the second question be something along the lines of, what do we need to work on in practice tomorrow? Would it be something like where it's solution based?
Yeah, they're probably going to bring up the problem, and you say, well, what's your solution? What's
so get their mind off of focusing just on the problem. If you bring up a problem, you better have thought out a solution or come up with a solution to always balance it out.
Yeah, talk about the solution. And the reason why you're doing this is because you know that the self-image is you're an agent of self-image growth in your kids, or an agent of self-image shrinking in your kids. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to have the self-image shrink. But you can cause them to shrink by talking about the problem all the time instead of talking about the solution. The third thing that I would ask them is, what are you going to do about it? And get them to don't tell them what they should do about it, but ask them what they're going to do about it.
That's genius, because you're getting them to enroll and take ownership of the solution themselves. And instead of you dictating top down what they're going to have to do, which you're only going to get like partial buy-in, if they come up with the solution themselves, that's very wise.
What you don't want to do, and my book Parenting Champions covers this, but you don't want to brag about what you did too much, because what you don't want, and the hardest thing for me was to raise boys that were shooters when I was Olympic Gold Medalist. Because
why is that?
I didn't want them to be shooters. I wanted they were pretty good soccer players. I wanted them to play soccer. I didn't want them to sit in my shadow, and because it's a hard shadow to stand in. Like what are they going to do? They're going to win 2 gold medals to the best dad? I mean, what's the probability that they're going to be able to do that? But they were persistent, and they ended up. I ran an international shooting school when they were teenagers, and so they wanted to learn how to shoot. So okay, and one of my sons, I had twin boys, and one of them, both of them won full ride scholarships for shooting in college, and so it wasn't a bad thing that they picked up shooting, but it was hard on them with me as their dad in a way. There were advantages and disadvantages to that.
And I guess I understand what you're saying, where it's like what you want to do is, you don't, as a parent, you never want to be, for obvious reasons, from like an ego standpoint, and I mean, it's not a good look on you anyway if you're like, I did that as a parent. But I think the downstream effect on your child is also that you're disempowering them, because if you're the one that's like the result of their success, well then there's no power that they can do it. It's like, oh, it was like because dad's helping me practice, or because my dad is a shooter, that's the only reason. and it doesn't allow them to kind of, again, that self-image that you talk about, build a powerful and a confident self-image. This all makes sense. Okay, so Grandpa Lanny, I'm going to drop off Chase to you for an entire. Chase is my son, for an entire summer. He's a blank little mold of clay. What would you do then if you know that he's got an aptitude towards golf and an interest in golf? What would you instill in him? How would you help kind of set him up to have a positive self-image and to basically have the best chance to succeed later in life? What would those summers look like?
How old is he?
Well, why don't we say maybe around like a 5 or 6 year old, and then maybe a 10 to 15-year-old.
Okay, let's talk about 10 or younger.
Okay.
I wouldn't train him. Now, golf is kind of a special case. Golf is kind of like gymnastics. Gymnastics is worse though. Golf is great. The reason I say that is that gymnastics, you got to start them at about 4, because when they hit puberty, you're getting, and your career is almost over. Because you don't see very many 40-year-old gymnasts, Olympic gymnasts.
No.
But you can see a lot of successful 40-year-old golfers. And golf is great sport because you can do it young and you can do it old.
You can play forever. Yeah. So let's assume then that they've been playing, pretty consistently at an early age.
Here's how I want to answer that question. I think that if you want to play Division I golf, which is kind of an essential to if you want to play on the PGA Tour, so that Division I golf, what that means is that you're playing at a university, you're playing on a golf team at a university that has a high level of competitors to play with, and if you want that. Whether you can afford the scholarship or that's even you're probably going to spend more money preparing your kid to get that scholarship than what the scholarship pays. But you're going to start young with a player, and especially if they have a passion for it. You can't instill passion. You can't make passion happen. But your kid has passion for it. I mean, anybody that gets up and says, I want to play golf today. Well, what, I remember a good example of passion. I'll give you 2 examples. The first example was I'm old enough to remember when Earl Woods brought a 3-year-old Tiger on the Mike Douglas show on television.
Yeah, very famous clip. Yeah,
and he was hitting the ball pretty good at 3. And so Mike Douglas asked Earl Woods, well, how often does he practice? And he says, practice. I can't get him off the golf course. It's time to eat, son. One more ball, Dad. It's getting dark, son. One more ball, Dad. This is an example of passion. When I was in college, I don't know why I was passionate about shooting, but I went to school. I went to the range first in college. And I shot, and then I went to class, and then came back from class, and I shot again. And I would have majored in rifle shooting if they'd have given me that major, but they didn't have a major in rifle shooting where I went, and so I probably trained twice a day, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, something like that, because training was not something I had to do. Training was something I got to do. And so
I love that distinction in your mind that it's
a kid who eats, sleeps, and wants to do this and has a passion for it. I think that parents, if they can afford it, they need to meet that passion. And be because it doesn't happen often. It's rare to get a kid who is really so internally motivated that I would call them passionate. By the way, there are three participation levels. The first participation level is I'm interested. Interested is people that they don't, they're not interested, they're not going to compete. I mean, I'm interested in shotgun shooting. I have a shotgun. I have a club membership. I go out to the club infrequently. Like most golfers are interested in golf. The most golfers don't compete, but interested is a good place. You got kids that play baseball on the weekends with their friends, or play some shoot some hoops, or do some things, but they're not committed enough to compete. So the second group is they're in the competition group, and they're training to compete. And you can ask a little bit more of the kids there. People in the competition area need to have lessons and need to be have good equipment and things like that. But there's another group. There's another group called they're interested, and the group beyond that are training to win. The training to win guys are passionate, and the training to compete guys are not going to beat the training to win guys because they're not passionate. The training to win guys are going to do the things that are necessary to win, and the training to compete guys are not willing to do that. Here's the challenge that I have for parents. Make sure that your participation level with your kids is equal to their participation level. The worst thing in the world is for a parent to be passionate and the kid is interested. Why can't you play? Why don't you want to play on the team and
pushing.
push them into a participation level? What is sad is that this can happen occasionally, that you have a kid that's passionate, and the parent wants to be passionate, but they don't have the money to support a passionate child to be able to. I mean, I have clients that my client, my son Troy, ended up being a 12-time national champion, a world champion, a rifle shooter, so he did okay. But he trains almost exclusively junior golf, and he is providing training at a golf academy that parents move from all different parts of the world to go to have their kids go to that golf academy, and it's just because Troy's there and because the coaches are there, and they make sacrifices, but I think it's important for parents to meet their children's participation level, not everybody is going to be passionate about sports, but I think everybody should compete in something. One of the things that I encourage my parents to think about education this way, that if your children are competing in something, they're going to learn something about themselves that they can't learn any other way than to compete. Life is one big competition. And if they don't learn how to handle success and how to handle failure and how to deal with this and the people skills that you learn through team sports and the self-reliance that you learn through individual sports, there are no subjects in school like that. As a matter of fact, I wrote a curriculum called for high school students for a semester-long elective called "What the Winners Know." Because did you take a course in school on how to think?
No, but I'm like, where do I sign up for that course? Okay, so Lenny, you have to share. What's so what were some of the highlights that like what do winners know that the rest of us don't?
Well, first of all, you've got to know that how performance is generated. You got to control your thoughts. It's not just skills. You got to control your thoughts, and you got to have a self-image that habits and attitudes that build self-image. Like
Okay, let's stop there for a second.
One of the most important things that I can share with you about that
Please.
is how parents need to teach their kids how to respond to what just happened. Because responding, there's a difference, but they already know how to react. They knew how to react when they were born. I mean, we come into this world, it's easy to react because when things go good, you're happy. And when things don't good, you're frustrated and you're upset and you throw things. And you already knew how to do that. But you're going to have to be successful in life. You're going to have to respond to what happened. And what people are not taught that the top people do is the top people, when they do something well, they reinforce it. They think about it. They talk about it. They write about it. They reinforce it. When they do something that's wrong, they view it as a way to overcome. They view it as it's not a mental error to make a mistake. Making a mistake and learning from it is a requirement to get better. I've never met a world champion yet that didn't say, I made thousands of mistakes. The only difference between me and the people I beat is I learned from those. So every time you make a mistake, responding means that you're learning from it. You learn from your mistakes. You learn from your mistakes. You don't just complain about them. You don't just reinforce them. Or you don't improve the probability it's like you to do them again. You don't blame other people. You don't complain. You just find a solution and you learn from it. So it's not winning and losing. It's winning and learning. That's responding. And so there are ways to do this. And one last thing is that there's a relationship between everything that a person does in life has three phases to it. It's that anticipation phase where you're preparing to do something. It has an action phase where you actually do it. And it has a reinforcement phase, what you think about immediately after you do it. And those three phases are directly related to the three mental processes that generate performance. The anticipation phase, what you think about before the action, is as a conscious circle issue. We tend to talk about these things as circles, bigger circle, better for you. The action phase is highly subconscious. And the reinforcement phase, what you think about after the action, how you respond to what happened, is a self-image issue. Your self-image is either built or torn down based on how you respond to what happens. Parents have to teach people how to do that right, because if not, they're never going to appreciate they're not going to learn from their mistakes. They're just gonna be frustrated, and life is one big competition. So you learn this stuff when you compete, and you learn that there's a difference between success is rewarded, and I don't want to be political here, but I just get real upset when I hear that about equity. Everybody's got to be the same.
The participation trophy.
Okay, let's throw out the medals in the Olympic, and see how many people want to do something.
Tune in.
How many people want to do something that has no reward? How many people want to do something that is easy to do? Every single person that's riding that boat that's going into. I was just watching the Olympics opening ceremony on the it's right before we started this, and they're bringing all the athletes in on a boat. That's never happened before, so those guys have got to be just so excited. But every one of those athletes are doing something that's really hard to do, and but they've learned a lot about themselves because it's hard, and people appreciate things in direct proportion to what the price they pay for it.
That's where value is, right? I mean, we value the struggle, and that's why it's so interesting when we can see top performers, be it top musicians, athletes, whatever it might be, someone that's dedicated the time and effort to be the best. That's a fascinating thing to watch, because I think on a deep level, it reminds us that we all have that ability to actualize this high potential in ourselves, and we're choosing not to on some level. And so it's amazing when you do see somebody that chose to actualize that potential. I see the three circles on your hat and on your, for those that are not listening to this or watching this on YouTube, Lanny's got his logo, which is the three circles that are intersecting together. And you talked about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the self-image. The conscious mind being, we're going to stay on golf because this is what's relevant to the podcast. So the conscious mind then is what you're thinking about before you go on the shot. So feeling comfortable, and I'm just going to ask you whether or not I'm thinking about this or I understand this correctly. So for me or for my child, before they step into the shot, it's to feel confident that they've got the right club, that they've got the right strategy, and that they can do this. Like, remind themselves that they can do this. Then just letting go and letting flow, almost tap into the subconscious aspect of letting your natural athleticism basically execute the shot. And then after, regardless of whether or not it was good or bad, making sure that you protect your self-image. So for example, if it was a bad shot, you'd be like, well, that was an anomaly. That's not like me. And then thinking, oh, right, I hit it off the heel or off the toe or something, as opposed to, and well, Lanny, I know you're not a golfer yourself, but we've all been on the golf course where, somebody hits a bad shot and we hear how they talk about themselves. You're like, you idiot. You always like you hear the worst self-talk in the entire world when you go golfing with somebody, usually. So is that the right way to think about it? Like, to use those circles?
Well, you did a really good job. You really did a really good job of describing that. That's exactly right. Hitting a golf shot has three phases to it. It has an anticipation phase, an action phase, a reinforcement phase. The sad thing is that where are people going to learn this? If you don't learn this, if you don't learn some of these things early, you suffer from the result, and those errors that you make that could have been avoided if your parents had told you what to do, they become embedded if you play for 15 years and you don't understand some simple, doable, treatable issues that you can get rid of fear, you can get rid of overtrying, overthinking, a lot of things that sometimes I'll have clients that have been playing for 20 years, and most of my clients, by the way, are not PGA Tour players. There are not very many PGA Tour players out there anyway. But I've taught a bunch of them. But most of my clients are guys that want to beat their brother-in-law. Really bad, really bad.
Sure.
Beat them bad to pay my fees, but my son teaches almost exclusively junior golf. It's a big market, and he's really good at it. Well,
Okay, so Lanny, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. I mean, you mentioned fear. How do I get over fear? Fear and golf go hand in hand. There's a lot on the line, and it can be something as simple as, like, obviously the result or a trophy, or if it's a competition, but it could also be bragging rights with your buddy, or the status or your self-image. I have two questions for you. You mentioned earlier about the kind of chatter in your head, or about kind of the way you talk to yourself on the course. how do we, assuming that we didn't have conscious aware parents from the get-go, and we find ourselves going into some sort of vicious loop where we're talking to ourselves, maybe not in the not most pleasant way, how do we correct that? Do you have any tips or tricks, like simple things that we can do to kind of snap us back to either being in the moment or being a little bit more pleasant with ourselves? And the second question is, how do we deal with fear then? Do you have any tips or tricks with when it comes to actually fear?
Well, let's talk about the first one. It shouldn't happen if you're running a system. If you Here's the thing, you need to learn my system, and when you have my system, you're too busy running the system to think about those things. There are steps in the system that you run, and you've got your routine, which is what you're physically doing. And once you can define the optimum thing to think about while you're running your routine, in other words, when I address the ball, when I there's a strategy portion, there's a rehearsal portion, there's a commitment portion, there's a what you think about when you're over the ball, right, Betty? Right, the last thing you think about before you takeaway occurs. All of those things are defined. When you define every time you physically do something, you have a well thought reason why you're thinking a certain thing. And once you define the optimum thing to think about before you hit the shot, and also have an optimum thing to think about after you hit the shot, so that you protect your self-image, you're running a system. Anytime you define what you're supposed to think about, the optimum thing to think about before, during, and after a task, you're running a mental system, and you have a chance to be mentally consistent. And when you're running that system, you can't think about this other stuff. There's no time. And one of the principles.
What would you say, Lanny? What would you suggest in between shots, or in between, like when you were doing your own shooting experience, or for a golfer? You have a lot of time in between. I love it. It completely makes sense to use something like the mental management system for the shot. But what about that time when you're walking maybe to your next hole, or you're waiting for your next opportunity to shoot? What would you do in that? What would you suggest?
Think about whatever you want to think about. But if you have a negative thought that comes in your mind, you better have a plan, practice, strategy to overcome that. And we teach people how to do that, so that you're free to think about whatever you want. You talk to your caddy, talk to another player, or just think about where you're going to have dinner. I mean, you can relax, enjoy yourself. Golf is fun. Shooting is fun, and you don't have to do that as long as when you get ready to when it's your turn to hit, you turn into somebody else. You turn into someone that runs the system. You do what you've trained to do, and your mind goes from one step to the next, and you always know where you are, and you have a chance at consistency when you do that. When I was in college and high school and college, and I started shooting at a time in America when there were over 1 million high school shooters shooting rifles every day in schools in America. And people say, I can't believe that.
A different time. Yeah.
Shoot rifles in schools? Oh yeah. And nobody got hurt, and everybody enjoyed shooting, and now it went from 1 million down to. It would surprise me if you had 5,000 people that do that today, in high school or college. But what happens is that what you learn about yourself is you have to have mental consistency in order to have technical consistency. In a proactive sport like golf and shooting and archery, these are all 100% proactive. It's not like tennis, which is serve is proactive. You can run a mental system for a serve, but you can't run a mental system when the ball's in play. Or like basketball, you can run a mental system, shoot a free throw, but when the ball's in play, you can't run a mental system. You have to learn what to do by drills, and that's why they.
It's a reaction based.
Yeah, it's more of a response than it is a planned, practiced sequence. But in sports that are 100% proactive, like golf, that eliminates a lot of problems. The problem is that most golfers that I know, when I ask them, "What are you thinking about before you hit the shot?" Well, sometimes I think about this, sometimes I think about that. Well, what are you thinking about when the last time you hit this shot, it went in the trees? What are you thinking about now? Oh, I'm thinking about don't hit it in the trees. I'm thinking, yeah, that's a good idea. Oh,
Lanny, I feel like you're in my mind right now when I'm playing golf, because that's often what I'm thinking about is unfortunately what went wrong last time, and that seems to be what I fixate on. So it's
well,
yeah.
I've actually had clients, 50-year-old men, come into my office and come and take my classes and brag about the fact that I'm hard on myself, and I want to beat themselves up. And I always ask them, well, how's that working out for you?
I'm here, aren't I? Not well. I'm
That-
assuming they say.
That's not a good strategy. Why do you do
No.
that? There are better strategies out there, and I just feel like that. What turned me on to write the book Parenting Champions was I wrote a book called With Winning in Mind that was really for athletes, that introduce the mental game to athletes. These are really what the winners are know, that you need to know that, and giving you a system to run. And it's a good introduction to mental management. But I was so concerned about the role of parents, because they're the most important mental coach that a kid will ever have. And if they're not trained, their probability that they're not going to do a good job is high. And I can't do everything, but I can do something. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to do this book. And every time or every chapter in there, I said, boy, I screwed this up when I was.
Lanny, you're all about strategies. You're all about systems. You have written two fantastic books, With Winning in Mind and Parenting Champions. For those people that want to work with you, that want to kind of get introduced to some of your systems, like the mental management system, what's the best way for people to find you, to reach out, to get your books?
Well, the first place I would go is we have two websites. The website, my website is called withwinninginmind.com. Withwinninginmind.com. You can reach me at info@mentalmanagement.com. Our books and journals and things like that we sell are at mentalmanagement.com. So you've got two websites, withwinninginmind.com and mentalmanagement.com. With winninginmind.com, there's actually a free report on that website about exactly how I use mental management to win my titles. I mean, what was the process I went through to be able to do that? So it's free, and that's on that. Now, if people don't want to wait, there's both of those books, With Winning in Mind and Parenting Champions, are on Audible. You can listen to on Audible. They're on all of my books are on Kindle. Freedom Flight, with with Winning in Mind, Parenting Champions, or on Kindle, and Amazon sells the paperbacks too if you want to go that route. But if you want to learn about what options that you have, we have a lot of things that are free. Our I would be happy to send anybody that's interested. I would be happy to send you the links to our online courses, the links to our audios, our Patreon channel, uh, uh, and actually we do a free 20-minute consultation for people if a lot of people don't know about that, but and I'm on half of those, so if you want 20 minutes with me, I'd love to know what you want to know. That's how I stay in business, is to find out what you want, and see if we can find a way to solve it. So
Love that. And all of what you've said, Lanny, is in the show descriptions here, so people can find you with all those links there. And 50 years of experience you've been studying the mental side of sports. Lanny, you're a wealth of information. Truly grateful and blessed to have this conversation with you. Any parting advice, maybe for the athlete themselves and for the parent of the athlete? Any advice for those two groupings of people?
I would say, for both of you, the most important thing I can tell you is that don't stop with learning a skill. You need to learn how to think. You need to pay attention to the mental game, and don't wait, because your competition is starting to pay attention. Back when I was in high school and college, even my first 3 years on the U.S. team, we thought that the mental game was something you had. It wasn't something you could learn. You were either mentally tough or you weren't mentally tough. And that's wrong. So we weren't trying to learn it. And it wasn't. But those days are over. People are smartening up now. They realize that the mental portion is important. And I would say that you got two choices, and as I see it, you can talk to as many really good players as you can about what are they doing about the mental game, and they'll probably confuse you. But that's one way. That's how I got my information. I spent 2 years on the phone talking to world and Olympic champions, but I had access to them because I had a silver medal in the Olympics. I think I had access that most people couldn't get. And but the resources are that what our work has been focused. I have focused on trying to get the most valuable information and make it simple enough to where people can actually use it. Because you can search for information all your life, and if it's not like you to do it, it's just books in the library that you don't learn from.
Yeah, you need to be able to read the information and digest it and understand it. Otherwise, it's kind of useless.
And you've got to apply it. You got to apply that information, but it doesn't take much to just contact us. Contact me at info@mentalmanagement.com, and I will send you the links to everything that we're doing, or the staff will, and if you want a 20-minute consultation, we will show you what we can do, for you. But don't wait, because your competition is getting smarter every day about the mental.
Ominous but wise words. Don't wait. The competition is getting wiser every. I mean, they're using it. I mean, it's no secret that sports and the mental side is now very much so in vogue, and it's something that people are paying attention to, which is why an expert like you, Lanny, is so valuable. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Can I just say one thing for you?
Of course you can.
Personally, I'm excited for you for this podcast because you've hit on something that I've been working on for a long time. And it is encouraging to me that you're doing this because this is so needed by parents, and all of the uh, people that you can bring into this, the parents that have been successful, or things that people that it's exciting to me that you're actually doing this because there's not enough of us that are interested in this, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing it.
Thank you for those kind words. Lanny, thank you so much.
You're welcome.